jurisprudence, federalism, and civics education. Marshall will talk with us today about private property and the proper role of government, the real lessons of James Madison's Federalist Paper number 10. Please give a Colorado warm welcome to Dr. Marshall DeRosa.
I don't have much time, I think 40 minutes or so, it's allotted. Came all the way from South Florida, so I'm not going to waste your time or mine. I'm going to cut to the chase. And if I haven't offended you, or at least kind of stoked you to think about things from a different perspective, then I failed. I call it like it is. I don't pull any punches. And if you have a disagreement with me, even though we don't have a Q&A session, I'd be more than happy to discuss my perspective and my presentation in between presentations, during lunch, whatever the case might be. Boy, I really don't know where to start. You know, I'm thinking, man, did I waste my time? Because I'm a cyclist. I do duathlons, triathlons, and I see those people, and I see the mountains, and I say, man, I'd be out riding this morning. You know, 50, 60 miles in beautiful South Florida. And the reason why I'm saying that is, oh boy, this sounds somewhat pessimistic, but like I said, this is how I see it. I've been studying this for over 30 years. Maybe it is too late. You know, when we had the video of Ronald Reagan, he raised the question, do we still know the freedoms intended for us by the Founding Fathers? And that sort of struck a chord with the group here. And I bet you most of us think that, yes, we know our freedoms, but do you? Because you just made a pledge a few minutes earlier, a pledge written by a socialist in the late 19th century. You pledge your allegiance to, quote, an indivisible union. That's not the Constitution. Our founding fathers didn't die and write and sacrifice and suffer for an abstraction such as a country. They did it for a principle, liberty. When I see Save America Foundation, I see America as being synonymous, if not a substitute for liberty. Save liberty. So how can you make a pledge to Almighty God that the Union is indivisible, come what may, and say you understand the Constitution? Think about that. You're either going to violate your pledge, your allegiance to God and your country, or follow the founders. Because secession was a way out of oppression. And it was practiced in these United States up until 1865. In the North, in the South, in the Mid-Atlantic, in the West, we have to get our thinking straight. Glenn Beck, I watch his program, he does some good things. The Lincoln Memorial, the very symbol of centralization and power and authority over your liberties. Lincoln has been co-opted by the establishment. It's pathetic. I was watching Glenn Beck a few weeks ago, and he had some so-called scholars about the Confederacy, that the Confederacy was fought for slavery, and they made up all these lies. It made me sick to my stomach. I emailed Glenn Beck, and I said, come on, put on the alternative view, the right, the historical view, about what the South was all about, first and foremost. Not a response. You have been socialized, not to the same extent as others, but socialized into this distorted worldview. And it's by design. It's what we call the conspiracy of education. Whether it's through the media, education, peer group pressure. If you want to recover your liberties, man, you've got to get radical, which comes from a Greek word, to the roots. And the roots are freedom and liberty. not pleasant to think about that. But when you think about the founders, the framers, they wouldn't recognize us here. And they would not recognize that pledge, especially in this day and age. How can you pledge allegiance to a country that has gone over the cliff? And Glenn Beck, I'm becoming increasingly convinced that that's a sleight of hand. It's sort of like a pressure release valve. Instead of really considering what the fundamental principles are, it's giving people a way to vent their frustration but still stay tied to the system. We are in a hell of a lot of trouble in this country. Rome is not burning, it's burnt down, and we don't even know it. I mean, the threats are just monumental. And yes, I have read Sam Huntington's The Clash of Civilizations, and I've read it 3 or 4 times. I've also read McCarthy's book, The Grand Jihad. And we are being assaulted internally, domestically, and externally. This is a crisis where freedom and capitalism, i.e. individual liberty, is losing to socialism, communism, and Islamism. And in those latter 3, the individual is subordinated to the collectivity in the quest of something known as social justice. Ideas have consequences, and most of us, I'm paid to do this. I've been doing this for 30 years. Don't even know what the hell's going on. And I beg to differ with Marita that the Green Movement is not a civilization. It's a means to an end. A temporary means to an end. But it's a means to destroy the founding principles and to make a heck of a lot of people rich in the process. Told you I was somewhat of a pessimist. But that's the way it is. I only have 40 minutes, and I feel like I would be betraying my fiduciary responsibility if I didn't just put it out on the table. Think about property. That's what my presentation is supposed to be about. Property rights. Under the weight of an overbearing and increasingly oppressive national government, the principles of 1776, where government's supposed to be based upon your consent, the same principles underpinning the Constitution have been thrown overboard. This is what the Federalists talk about, the Anti-Federalists. How can you register your consent in a country the size of the United States of America? You have so-called inalienable rights. And yes, you can concede some of them for the public good. But the element of consent, meaningful consent, has to be present in that process. Is our government, whether national or state, protective or contrary to our natural rights of life, liberty, and property? You have to ask yourself, as the framers did, is it time to alter or even abolish an instituted new form of government? To quote, institute a new government, those are Jefferson's words, appears to be a radical response, which it is. And it's not to be taken lightly. But what does the record of our national government make clear? Jefferson talks about transient causes. Ask yourself, are these transient or temporary causes? Taxation without meaningful representation. $1 trillion deficits, corporate bailouts, hundreds of trillions of dollars in government obligations, taxes consuming over 50% of our incomes, a Federal Reserve System with the power to create fiat money, open borders and an open disregard for immigration laws, domestic spying and targeting of Americans exercising their constitutional rights to challenge the U.S. government, an act of the Supreme Court usurping power to override the will of the people in the respective states, a rigged electoral system giving